Welcome to episode 37 of the Putting Couch, brought to you by the SeeMore Putter Company's tour team. I'm Jim Grundberg, along with Ted Galena and Cody Hale, and we're excited to kick off this episode. We have heard from a lot of our listeners around the world on a regular basis that they'd love to have some input, and we decided that as we move forward, that's a great idea. And so this show, I think, will be encompassed mostly in just trying to get to some of these great questions and topics that we've heard. We'll try and give our best answers and at least get a discussion going. And then, we're just really, really pleased that there are so many of you listeners out there that are loving the first podcast focused on all things putting. And it can take us all in so many different directions. But let's just jump into it, guys. I mean, I've got Ted and Cody. They coach players of all levels right on up to the PGA Tour, and so I think we'll get some good answers for you. But I saw, our question this week to our listeners was, what topics, guests, and or general questions would you like for the tour team to discuss on upcoming episodes of the Putting Couch in 2021? So we've got a lot of questions here. I'll just kind of go through.
Got a lot of responses back from it. It was pretty awesome.
We got a lot of responses, Ted.
So thank you out there, listeners.
We sure did. So, one of the first ones that I saw that jumped out at me was our listener asked the actual mechanics of the putting stroke. How do you start it? What controls it? How do you get the right path? How do you rock your shoulders, if that is the way to do it? I find my backstroke comes too far inside, and therefore I struggle not to block it, and I struggle to get a consistent takeaway. So, I think that's a great question to start with. And just in that question, you can see there's about 5 questions within that.
I was going to say there was a lot there. We could spend 30 minutes on just this one.
Exactly. And, if nothing else, that just underscores that putting great is not easy, but we try and help you, really have your best chance at great putting on this podcast. So, Cody, why don't you start off? And, again, the actual mechanics of the putting stroke. How do you start it? What controls it? And how do you get the right path?
Your mechanics, I think a lot of us think that we can go out and practice, and then, one day we're practicing our stroke. The next day we're practicing, our hand position or ball position. So to me, great mechanics start with a good setup. Your setup and your fundamentals are controlling the mechanics of how you move the putter. So, for instance, if we get set up and you see somebody that might be really open to their target line, well, their aim and their stroke path may follow that a lot of times. So you get something that, your setup is influencing how the putter is going to move. So the actual mechanics of how the putter moves back. For this instance is, the backstroke comes too far in. Rather than saying, okay, just feel like you take it back a little straighter, there's something in there. There's a cause and effect, right? So there's something in the setup that's probably controlling that putter to move too far in. Is it a little too far from the golf ball? Is it too long of a putter? I think there's a lot of instances where, things that can promote too much movement to the inside. Is it too much hand action? So, I think it starts with ensuring that you're in a really good setup position, making sure the distance from the golf ball is where you want it, your posture tilt, making sure your eyes are in a good spot. We like that just to be just on the inside of the golf ball. Sometimes if you're too far away, you'll see it, 4 or 5 inches inside the target line or more sometimes, and then the toe gets up in the air and you really get this really strong arc and a lot of rotation. So it can, and to be honest, to add on to that, I mean, that's a lot just right there, but to add on to that, somebody that gets their shoulders and forearms close to the target line or has too much tilt from the waist up, for a right-hand golfer, how we hit golf balls, you have too much shoulder tilt. That can cause a path moving too much in to too much out. So again, I always go back to setup. How can we get you into a better setup and help promote better mechanics through that versus maybe just putting a Band-Aid on it and just trying to get by for a little while by a certain feel, because feel does change, and that setup will help you to be more consistent long term.
And I would add to that what Cody was saying is spot on. Most people think, like he said, the Band-Aid is a quick fix, is a change of putter out here or change the length or so forth. But if you look at someone's posture and their setup, that dictates a whole lot. So just, we always say it's like shooting free throws in basketball. You want to do the same thing over and over and over again. you know where the start is, you know how it's supposed to go during a shot, you know what the inning's supposed to be like. If you happen to miss a shot, you know what you've done wrong. So if you can get in a consistent posture, consistent setup, and do it every single time, it's going to lead to a lot more good putts. The key is making sure your posture and your setup is good. You know, like Cody's saying, your eyes are too far over the golf ball, you get stuck a whole lot.
And I think that goes into aiming the putter, right? So if you aim it left, then that can promote. We see it all the time. If you, let's say you aim it a little bit left or outside the hole from 6, 8, 10 feet, that's going to promote, probably mechanics in your putting stroke for a block, right? Putter face got to come in. You're trying to have an amount of phase change. So you're trying to feel how much to hold it off. So setup produces better aim, which can in return produce a better putting stroke, and the mechanics there are very sound.
Well, and also it's sort of like if you were walking the driving range, right? When I was a club pro, you could usually see someone's swing and change it real quickly. How many times do we get emails with pictures? We ask them to send us the pictures of their posture and their setup. It takes us 2 seconds to go, well, look here, player A, this is where you were, and look where you are now, and this is why it's causing what you just discussed with me over the email.
And that's a great point. I think if you actually saw what you looked like when you putt, most golfers would probably be quite surprised, because I think even myself, we work and we play golf and we love it, and all of a sudden out a little bit down the road, it's sort of like you really have to either go and look at yourself and your posture and your putting stroke in a mirror, or have somebody videotape you, or ask your buddies what they think about your putting stroke, because I think the reality and what the perception of most golfers is completely different, I would guess. And it really, it's you've made it so much more difficult. If you're not doing any of that stuff right, then you're in a position where, in order to consistently make great putts, we always say, you have to do 2 wrongs or 3 wrongs to make a right, versus starting in the right posture. And I would say, you said, if you're out there and you're listening, and you don't know yet what your own putting stroke looks like, which I would venture to guess a lot of you don't, take a look at it. And it's just constructive criticism. Again, there have been some golfers over history that have putted with some very unusual strokes, but in general, one of the other questions that kept coming up is, tell us some of the things that great putters tend to do. And the one thing that most great putters tend to do is they tend to get in that very relaxed, consistent, comfortable, proper posture setup, so everything else sort of flows from that.
That's a good lead-in, because I think we think we look like Tiger. In reality, we putt like Billy Mayfair. People realize that. But hey, both of great players. But and it is right, because Ted and I, when we're in here, we'll take pictures of people's posture, and they're like, "My gosh, I look like that," and it's like, yeah, because you can't see yourself. You're just going off of a feel, and you wake up, you feel different. You get out there, you try a couple of different things, and all of a sudden you may be comfortable, but you may not be in a good posture. And those two things can start to line up the more you keep an eye on that. And like you said, it's easy to take a picture and sort of look and see, okay, get that positive feedback on in that benchmark on, okay, where am I at with my posture, where am I at with my putting stroke? And I think 2 things to learn is you got to have repetition, you have to have good feedback. So those 2 things are really important. And now with technology, we can just snap a quick video or picture with our iPhone and say, okay, here's what I need to work on, because that wasn't really our perception and reality.
Exactly.
Those 2 things weren't lining up.
And Cody, my guess is a lot of golfers might say, oh gosh, but that's how I've putted for a long time. As ugly as that is there, could I really change? And you work with a lot of players at all levels at the studio, and can they? Is there something that you can do as an instructor, or our SPI network of instructors can help golfers to say, hey, listen, you may be comfortable with that, but you're looking for some help in putting. We can help.
That's right. The way I always position it is, do you want to get to your ceiling, or do you want to raise your ceiling? Right? Because doing it a certain way, your ceiling may be very low in terms of the level of consistency. It's, hey, we've done it for this, putted like this for 30 years. Hear that all the time with gentlemen that come into our studio. Okay, well, what are you open to changing? Because what we're probably going to do is go in and try to just enhance that, and continually, maybe sometimes we may have to rebuild the setup. And are you open to that? What are you playing once a week? Are you playing 5 times a week? So I think you have to take it into account. But if we can make somebody's setup just a little bit better, and it doesn't have to be you go from, poor posture to looking, like I mentioned, like some of the guys on tour, but it can be a progression, right? And putting is one of the things that it doesn't take just hours and hours and weeks and months to really ingrain. You can start to see immediate results, and it can just be a progression and say, hey, look, here's the things we're going to work on. But everybody can change and get better. It's just how much time are you willing to put into it?
Well, and then also the repeatability of it. And, since this is the putting couch sponsored by the SeeMore Putter Company, how can you make it repeatable? Well, we say it all the time, it's a simple red dot and white lines. So we tell you the why to get in that position. We show you how to stay in that position consistently, and it's done by hiding that red dot and 2 white lines.
And that's where, as a putter company, obviously we make a ton of different putters. We're so proud. We make, we have the most beautiful milled putters here, 100% made in the United States, and all kinds of different shapes, and we'll fit it to your needs. But as you said, Ted, the one simple underlying fundamental is that at its essence, SeeMore putters are a training aid, right?
Yeah, the basic fundamentals.
And at any level of golf, instructors will work with their students to get back to these very questions that this listener asked, which is, how can I know? How can I get rid of an improper path? How can I do all this stuff? And I mean, all the stuff that we're talking about, in some way, your little check is, am I set up the same way all the time? I've got the red dot hidden. I can see the 2 white lines. And even during the putting stroke, we can help the golfer control the proper natural arc path so it's not coming too open, too quickly, too inside. So, I think that is, we love, obviously talking about our putters, but in the putting couch, we really want to talk about what's fundamental to great putting. And it is, Cody talked about it. I mean, in the end of the day, if we can't get you set up the same way every time in a comfortable, consistent, repeatable posture, then you're going to bring a lot of luck into play.
Well, you also recognize quickly what a actual good putt feels like. And I don't know how many of our listeners out there actually know what a good putt feels like, because they're searching from one putt to another through the rounds or every other round. And so, yeah, we know that not every putt is going to be your best putt, but hopefully you have hit so many good putts that when you actually hit a bad putt, you recognize it and you can self-diagnose and take it from there. And
Cody mentioned a couple of tour players that do things sort of in a more fundamentally perfect way versus some that have just figured it out. And in the end of the day, I mean, if you get your putter face exactly square at impact and you can hit the ball without having side spin, you can become a great putter. And there are different ways to get to that. But I think anybody would agree that if the easier path is more likely going to be the one that's going to be less stressful and more repeatable.
And that's it. It's all about trying to create a system to be very consistent. So you've got somebody that, like you said, you can take the putter out the end and just square up the putter face perfectly and aim 4 or 5 degrees left or right. You can teach to aim the putter better or implement some fundamentals to help you do that. But there's so many things out there, and so much of what we've done in our research is like, okay, is like you mentioned, can guys change? Well, sure, because if a guy comes in and he's like, man, I'm a pretty good putter, but I'm looking to get better. Okay, well, he's aiming 4 degrees right, and all he's relying on is his hand-eye coordination, basically his timing, right, to square the face. So he's aiming here, and he's having to start it, 3 or 4 degrees offline every time. So his feel changes, and he's probably a streaky putter. So if we go in and you don't have to be a perfect aimer, but let's say you cut that in half. We help you do that, and then it's a progression. Then you do get aiming better. We feel like you're going to give yourself a better opportunity. So it is about being consistent, and it's about getting into a good, solid setup and something that is reliable.
Like this particular question later on, am I rocking my shoulders? I mean, in this particular case, this golfer says, it seems like his issue is that putter is coming too far to the inside, and then he struggles not to block it. So he's coming back to the inside, and from that point forward, I mean, the putter is then moving to the outside, and it's not ever squaring up. So he doesn't have, he's not in a position to actually have that slight natural arc where it does naturally square up. So that's probably an issue you see a lot. And in that particular case, again, you've talked about you would check the posture, you would check the putter length. Once you've done all of that, then what are some other things where you might have somebody work on that? issue, in this particular case, our listener?
So a couple of things you can do, like you mentioned. Okay, where do you feel the power source? I always think the power source is around the center of the sternum. Rocking the shoulders has always been something like, it's a feel, right? You feel your shoulders, you feel the sternum. I've always thought about the sternum because rocking the shoulders always, it creates a lot of tilts to me. So that's when the putter starts moving in different areas. So I've always liked the power source to be around the center of the sternum, and how people use that is really individual. But once we get into a better setup, how can we, let's say, expedite the process? So one of the easiest and cheapest things that you can do to get a little feedback is have alignment stick, right, on the toe of the putter. So we've seen, obviously, Zach Johnson, Jordan Spieth do this drill, a lot of guys. Alignment stick on the toe of the putter, and then what you do is you put the putter down and against the alignment stick, and then on the heel side of the putter is put a tee. And then, okay, for this certain listener, we're targeting against a inside movement on the backstroke. So we would put maybe an additional tee or two tees on the right side. So when he takes it back, if he takes it too far in, he's going to get the feedback that he's taking it too far inside. And then if he crosses the line on the way through, it'll go across that alignment stick. So what we're now starting to do is understanding what a natural, good, solid stroke, natural arc stroke feels like to take the putter back and then properly release it on plane, because that stroke may be ingrained right now, and then we made a couple adjustments in setup. Now we have the feedback in order to start ingraining that into our putting stroke.
Perfect. And the golfer also asks, I guess one of the other questions is that, it is the winter time, and it's what can I be working on now, in the cold, so that, when I finally get out there and start golfing in the spring, I could have made some improvement. And, we've talked about training aids. I mean, the one thing that's also consistent with most great players, I mean, not just the tour level, even if you go out and you look at your club champion at your club, or you look at the person that's won the city championship, I mean, there are people that spend a lot more time on the putting green than you probably do. And they do drills. What are some of the good ones?
Yeah. Inside the house, I think an easy drill, we're talking about stuff that's really easy, that you don't need a lot of space. You don't need really even a putting green for this one, is taking a ruler and putting down the ruler to get your start line. So, your face is going to be square because you're going to put it up against that. And then just trying to roll the ball down with proper speed, trying to roll the ball down that ruler so it rolls the length of it. You can get a yardstick, 36 inches, have a 3-foot one, or there's longer ones. And what that's doing is it's not only helping you understand that your putter face is starting square, but the most important thing of it is returning back to square. And that's such a simple drill. And the other ones I really like are, is having, we've got hardwood or tile where it's got perpendicular lines, right? So that way you can set up, make sure your feet get feedback on that, make sure your feet and your body is set up properly, and then the putter face, and then just make some strokes without a ball, just feeling what it's like to make a consistent stroke. And then that way you've done your homework. Now, once you go to the golf course, you're probably going to be in a better spot in terms of going through your routine and getting into a good setup position.
I would also add a simple one is checking your alignment. We have a triangulator here that you can get online that is simple. It's a triangle on a string, and it actually shows you where you're aimed when you pull that out. We have a great video that talks about that. Or you can use a laser. You get these lasers at your local hardware store that help frame or level out the pictures on the wall, and it shoots a laser down the line. So again, whatever you can do to set up, and when you look down the line, you start training your eyes of what that, that you're aimed dead square, what your body feels like, you trust that. So now you get to the green, that's one less thing you have to worry about is your alignment. It's great to practice that, but you don't have to harp on it so much because you've done it over the winter so many times, and you're training your body and your eyes when you set up and you tilt your head, look down the line, what it feels like.
And a lot of golfers are not in sync with their alignment. A lot of golfers are off. Is that correct, Ted?
Oh, yeah,
And
definitely.
if you're off, over and over again, you're going to make other adjustments because you think you're going to be hitting good putts. They're not going to be going in, and it's not because you're actually not even hitting a good putt. You're just hitting it to the wrong line.
Exactly.
And then you start making changes that just it sort of escalates out of control the bad way.
You're exactly right. During the round of golf, you think you aimed there, you hit a good putt, but that's where you aim. So the next hole, well, let's see, I aimed, the ball went 3 balls to the left, so let me aim about 4 balls to the right. And then all of a sudden you're bouncing throughout your round of golf on every putt. You're indifferent about your aim, and out goes that round. Or at least not until you get it back after 11 or 12 holes.
I think that's spot on, because if, like we said before, if you're going to practice one thing, aiming's the hardest thing to do, right? So you should practice your aim, because if you know you're getting in a good setup and you're aiming the putter better, you're going to consistently produce better mechanics, because you're not having to adjust, you're not having to manipulate. So if you're going to do anything, always know where you're aiming it. And especially, we tell this to all players, is like, if you're going to take time to go out to the practice green, at least practice your aim a little bit, because what it's doing is it's teaching your eyes to calibrate and see the line properly. And, we mentioned training aids. We've got a portable training mat that's phenomenal indoors. So if somebody's looking for an additional training aid, the portable training mat, and there's different versions out there. This is our version, and what it does is it can help you manage aim. It can help you manage stroke. It can help you manage your face to your path, the start lines, your stroke distance. So there's so many great things that go into this one mat. I mean, it's really all-inclusive in this mat, and it's something you can do indoors without a ball, indoors with a ball, or outdoors, because it works just on so many different levels.
Cody mentioned about when you're practicing, know where you are aimed, and that's 100%, because if you don't know where you aimed when you're practicing, you don't know when a good putt feels like. If you're here and I'm giving a lesson, I'm always looking from the hole, looking back to where you are putting, because I want to make sure that every putt you make during the lesson, you're actually aimed dead straight. So when you do happen to hit it wrong or hit it off a little bit, I can tell you, no, you were aimed dead straight, but you held on to it a little bit. You pushed it or you pulled it that way. So knowing where you are aimed correctly during your practice out there on the putting green, that's huge.
We also, another great question was, I was interested in how to judge distance control or pace in reading the greens, which is a great question because, of course, every putt is a combination of the speed and the line. And there's going to be only 2 ways. There's only 2 right answers in terms of which speed should I have. I mean, you either have to have a speed that hits the ball consistently past the hole or consistently to the hole. The third option, consistently short of the hole, is not an option, right? But there are 2 totally different theories there. Some golfers like to have all putts and, really right around the cup because they feel like it makes the cup bigger. You got a bigger chance to make it. Other golfers would much prefer to take a little bit of the inconsistency of the break out and hit it a little bit more aggressive. So, Cody, talk about speed control and how to practice it and how to know when you found your right level of speed control.
So I've got 2 to 3 things here on this. And 2 of them are ways to practice, and one of them is a stroke thought. So the first one, we've seen a lot of the guys on tour do this for years, and I think it's probably one of the great drills in terms of being able to, practice your speed. And you need, a few tees and a golf club. So put the golf club at 18 inches to 2 feet past. That way you've got a reference point to hit it. And then start at 9 feet and go 6-inch increments. So you go 9, 15, 21, 27, 33 feet.
6 feet increments.
6 feet increments starting at 9 feet.
And the golf club is just sort of laying behind the hole so that if you hit the ball past the hole and it missed, at 18 inches, it would actually stop against the golf club.
That's right. So we'll put a tee at each one of those locations. You take 3 balls to start. So here's the goal, right, is to get it to the hole but not touch that. You're okay to make it and play a game. So you get -1 for leaving it short, -1 for hitting it too hard and hitting the alignment stick, +1 for getting it within that range, and then 2 points for making it. And so what it is, it's tangible. You can track it. It's tangible results. So when you go and say, okay, I zeroed out that time. Okay, your goal next time is to get 1 or 2 positive points and continue doing that. And the beauty of this is that you can do it on uphill, downhill, left to right, right to left. And that's just such a great drill, even to do before the round. If you've got an extra 5 or 10 minutes, go hit those, because now you're hitting, okay, 9 foot, I hit 3 putts, and then I got all 3 of those in. And then you'll start to identify your strengths and weaknesses and what distance those are. So good. And we see some of the great lag putters of this time doing those drills pretty often. And then the second one I have, you don't even really need a hole. It's 3 tees, what I like. And I'm a big proponent of having the stroke length be the dictator for the distance that you hit it. Meaning we're not changing the speed that it enters. We're just changing to a longer stroke for a longer putt. And taking three tees, and you're going to hit this about 10 feet or so. So what you would do is you'd measure it out. So you'd have one tee, you'd have like 8 inches in separation between that tee, and then on the other side it'd be 8 inches. So equal distance stroke. So at the tee in the middle is where you set your golf ball. And the goal here is to take the putter back to the back tee and follow through and hold it at the other tee. And the goal here is to hit about 3 to 5 balls and have them all wind up in the same spot. And that's so good because you're managing stroke length and you're managing the speed that it enters. So one time, okay, I made the right stroke length, but I had too much speed, so the ball went too far. The next time is I was too slow. So you start to really get an understanding for what your stroke's like. And I really love those 2 drills.
And I think that's where you and I and Ted, all 3 of us have had a chance during our careers to spend an awful lot of time out on tour, which is incredible. And a couple of things we learn on tour is that, when you stand about 50 feet away from a tour player putting, I mean, it's a tour player because that tempo is the same. It's relaxed, it's comfortable because in general, they're letting the size of that arc with the putter, the pendulum size dictate the distance, right?
That's right.
It doesn't. It's longer putts. They take it further back and it comes further through. Gravity sort of slows it down, but it's very, very relaxed.
They have most amateur golfers think they have to accelerate. The tour players are understanding that they don't need the acceleration. They create the speed through their rhythm in the backstroke because it's a longer backstroke. And that's so key. I think that for players, I understand there's a lot of different profiles out there and people judge distances better. But with the agronomy the way that it is, I think if you really struggle with speed control, you need to try it. We talk about 60-40 the stroke length, but for easy math, we measure it out at 50-50 so you can just get that feeling and just allow that tempo to really, in the length of the stroke, to control the speed. I think you'll see a lot of improvement.
That's fantastic. And going back to the speed drill, one of the other things that we have seen on tour, if you're ever out at a tour event during a practice round, you'll see the players, and usually they've got some sort of little game going on with the other guys they're playing. So their first ball is sort of in play, and that's their little money game that they have just to keep it interesting. But once they get on that green, you'll see tour players will spend oftentimes 15 minutes practicing putting, and they're not putting to cups, they're putting to a dot, a spot. They'll throw something down, but what they're doing essentially is to try to get the feel for the speed of those greens, right?
No
and
question.
They've got a lot of different ways to do it. And lag putting, you mentioned, is your proximity to the hole after that first putt, and the ones that are the closest to the hole are the ones that have the easiest tap-ins for par, that they put the least amount of pressure on themselves, and they end up being the guys usually at the top of the money list.
No question. And, and we talk about lag putting from 20, 30 feet. The guys that are that good from that distance are also really good from 8 to 10 feet, and speed is, to me, equally as important right there. So they're letting the ball fall in when a lot of us are hitting great putts, but we hit it a little too hard and it lips out, where theirs may fall in. So it's so important, and those type of drills really, really help.
We also had a couple of questions, one about broomstick putting and one about the claw. We'll start with broomstick, which is kind of funny because broomstick putting is something that over the last few years has been bashed. The USGA, when they took the belly putter and the broomstick anchored, sort of out of play on tour, there was a lot of talk about it, but broom has sort of worked its way back into the tour because, Bernhard Langer, who's sort of the king of the broom, never really left it. He just sort of unanchored it by moving it away. And while we're not, hiding the red dot, and really in general, our SeeMore putter system is really to try and give you the same confidence in your standard length putter as anchored players used to have when they were allowed to anchor, right? But the broom putting is the one thing that is definitely consistent with broom putting is that that pendulum stroke that you said. If you watch somebody with the broom, they're doing exactly what you said the great tour players do, which is that they're controlling the speed and the distance of the putt by how far they bring that back, and they're just sort of releasing it and letting it just sort of naturally flow.
That's right. And I will go on record to say you do not want to see my putting stroke with the broomstick putter. So but it is, it's a great concept. And like you said, it's one pivot point. And I think that's what we talk about with our standard SeeMore putters. It's just like the belly putter. It's one pivot point. And it allows the putter, if you really watch, it allows the putter to swing sort of, you're controlling the distance by the amount of backstroke you have, pretty much equal distance, and really allowing the weight of the putter do most of the work. And like I said, you don't see many broom putters starting to manipulate the shaft position and all that. And I think that's why you see a lot of guys go to it that are really fluid in that stroke. And that's, in all honesty, I mean, yes, it's a different lie angle, a little different concept, but that's sort of what we're trying to do. And that's what you see out of a lot of great putters on tours, that one nice pivot point.
It's a simple system.
It is a really simple system. And if you can get that dialed in, I mean, a lot of guys do have success. I had a fitting for one the other day. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world to fit because you're trying to now find where you put that. But
adding
has a lot of success
the consistent ball position at the same time. I mean, you get the same sound, feel, and roll.
Your posture's the same once you get that length out in, because it's, you sort of have a reference point, just like the red dot and the white lines. You have a reference point in a lot of positions. The shaft is neutral. A lot of times you don't see a lot of lean. And I think that's why guys have a really, the guys that are good at it have a lot of success, because they can see the putter faces square. They can see it aligned properly. They have a consistent ball position, consistent posture. There's a lot of consistencies.
I've seen no question about it. Our broomsticks go out the back door.
Well, it's a very
orders,
small.
Yeah,
it's a very small niche. Interestingly, at SeeMore, if we change from the putting podcast to our SeeMore hats, I mean, and because there's a small group of golfers that do love that style of putting, we actually make a broomstick putter. And if you have any interest, you can get a hold of us, and we'll help get you fit into one. Because, golfers are, what you love. But in general, if I could just sort of say broomstick putting, it's not really, to your point, Cody, it's not really like a quick game improvement crutch. Most of the players that we see that are using brooms are players that play golf almost every day, are very serious players. Oftentimes, maybe due to some back issues or what have you, they want to practice putting for hours, but their standard posture with a standard length putter will not allow that. So a lot of them have gone to the broom putter because it'll allow them to stand much more straight up and still practice putting for hours. So is it the answer for everyone? Absolutely not. It's a very small niche. Cody, you've won state championships, and as you said, we could put a broom putter in your hands, and it's not just as simple as picking it up. But if you're that type of golfer and you're interested, I mean, it's worth looking into.
It is. I can make the best figure 8 stroke you've ever seen with it. But no, it is. If you can, because you leverage the putter in a different way. Obviously one hand high, the other one low. So yes, if you can get that dialed in, it takes an amount of time to get used to that. But for some players, it's a great concept.
So this is, I really enjoy actually just answering questions directly. I think this is something. I think this is something that we're going to have to continue. So I'll just mention a couple of the other questions. I'd be interested to discuss what we can learn from the great putters of the past, even the unorthodox, and some of the current best players on tour. This Patrick Reed. What are the common factors? I think one of the things we've talked about is relaxed, simple systems, consistent. I would use the term athletic, which is funny because I think one of the most interesting conversations I ever had with our great friend Zach Johnson, who's won 2 major championships with the SeeMore putter, was he felt like putting was actually the most athletic part of the game, which kind of stunned me at first. But then, all the things we've talked about, shooting free throws, whatever it is, it's a very precise, athletic motion, and you have to approach it as an athletic movement, and so that means you have to be relaxed, and you have to take tension away, and so and I'd say that that's something that we'll continue to talk about. But there's no question that the great putters out there, one of the common factors is that these are athletes out there, and they involve all aspects of their athleticism to become great putters.
I would also add they practice. Okay, so I mean, yeah, we go and hit range balls or we hit balls to warm up, but they also make a point to go practice, and they have a system or a time frame on what they do to practice: 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So take time to start working in. If that's something new you have to think about, new for the season, you need to start learning how to practice putting correctly.
And they practice with a purpose, and a lot of times they practice with instructors. And again, as part of the SeeMore Putter Company, we have trained a global network of instructors. We call it the SeeMore Putter Institute, certified instructors, and we can help match you up with some of them because, I mean, again, like any other part of the game, if you want to be great at it, yes, you need to spend a lot of time practicing, and you really want to be practicing perfectly. Another couple of questions about successful touring pros who've used SeeMore to explain why their putting has improved. I mean, I think if you look back at a couple of the podcasts we've already done, one of the great things about the putting couch is you can go all the way back to episode 1. These are all what we call evergreen episodes. There's nothing that dates them. And so we've got some episodes in the past where we've had Mike Hicks on, who caddied for Payne Stewart and won the 1999 U.S. Open at Pinehurst, greatest putting performance in U.S. Open history. And I think, wow, you want to get some insights in terms of
great one.
Yeah, in terms of how these players used SeeMore. That episode is unbelievable. We've got other episodes with other players, tour players at different levels that can kind of help unveil that. Damon Green talking about Zach Johnson winning the Masters. And so
I'd add in Brant Jobe there.
Brant Jobe.
Was a good
oh, my goodness.
His story is incredible.
Yeah. Go listen to that
it.
episode with Brant Jobe, and you will understand how, while a SeeMore putter is unbelievable for the average golfer, which is most of us, how it has also helped some really, really great players improve that part of their game.
Well, he had the same thoughts as the average golfer, and you wouldn't think that. And yeah, it was.
And finally, a lot of the questions said, hey, what about teachers and instructors out there that use SeeMore and teach with SeeMore? Could we have some of them featured? And that's a great point. And we've started to do that. We can direct you towards some of those. We've had Andy Gorman on. We've had
George Connor,
yeah,
Paul
Castor. And we'll continue to do that. So great questions, and I think really we've kind of hit the limit. I mean, as long as you keep coming back with the questions, it's a great format because we want to make sure that this is a discussion. So you can get a hold of us anytime you want it. info@seemore.com.
They can contact us anytime with thoughts or topics that you'd like to hear. We'd love to listen to what you have to say.
Send us videos, and I know a lot of you will probably come to this podcast through various channels out there. The network is growing, which is great. So again, this is Jim Grunberg along with Cody Hale and Ted Galena. We are the SeeMore Putter Company Tour Team, and we bring you the Putting Couch Podcast. Thank you.
We appreciate you joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you do wherever you're listening. Be sure to leave a rating and review because that's how we get the Putting Couch Podcast content in front of more people. Also, take a screenshot and share it on social media and tag us at SeeMore Putters or #Team SeeMore.